our Housing and Community Affairs Committee to order. I would like to virtually welcome all of you that are watching from Facebook Live and HTV, council members, staff, and presenters in attendance. This meeting will be held via Microsoft Teams due to COVID-19. I would like to acknowledge Councilmember Peck in the queue. And I'm sure a few others will be joining us as we move on with today's meeting. For our agenda this morning, we'll hear from a variety of leaders from our Housing and Community Development Department regarding planning and grant management, finance, economic development, public services, public facilities, and then in conclusion, we'll hear comments from our director, Tom McCaslin. After the final presentation, we will open the meeting to those individuals that have registered for public comments before our Monday's 12 noon deadline, and we have 3 that are scheduled. At this time, I would like to welcome the Director of our Housing and Community Development Department, Tom McCaslin, and his Deputy Director, Derek Sellers, to provide their presentation. And I would also like to acknowledge Councilmember Tarsha Jackson. Thanks for joining.
And me. Thank you, Chair Thomas. And we have a fairly full agenda here today, so I will hand it off directly to Director Sellers to make the presentation on the first item.
Good morning. For agenda item 2, the House Community Development Department will recommend City Council approval of the city's 2021 annual action plan. It concurs with the city's FY22 fiscal year. We have a short presentation about the grants and budgeted activities found within the action plan. So every year we budget funding for specific programs and activities based on money that HUD provides to the city. On February the 25th, HUD posted its 2021 allocations for the city of Houston, and the budgets on the following slides are based on these allocations. Our total entitlement grant allocation is about $47.9 million. This includes funding for Cdbg, Home, HOPWA, and ESG, but we also anticipate receiving program income associated with Cdbg and Home, so altogether it comes out to about $48.2 million. The totals for this is Cdbg at about $24.8 million, $10.4 million for Home, $10.8 million for HOPWA, and $2.1 million for ESG. So let's dive into the budgets for these grants a little bit more. If you go back go back a slide. Thank you, appreciate it. So we use these formula grants to address housing issues and improve the quality of life for Houston residents. With Cdbg, we look to provide housing, public services, public facilities, and economic development traditionally. For the Home grant, we provide affordable housing development. For the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS or HOPWA, we provide housing and social services for people or families with HIV/AIDS. And finally, with the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG, we provide shelter and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. Next slide. So on the screen, what you have is our draft Cdbg budgets. It totals about $24.8 million, as I touched on before. Some of these activities include funding for public services, public facilities and improvements, home repair, our homeownership assistance, which is down payment assistance funding, and then code enforcement as well. Next slide.
Derek, if I could just jump in before we move off of this slide. We often get the question about homeowner assistance and why it's at $900,000. I just want to remind folks that the majority of our homeownership assistance funding is coming through the disaster 17 funding. Derek, remind me of the total. I think it's about 25 million there.
Yeah, I think it's actually a little higher than that. We made some shifts in the recent negotiation with the GLO. That's one of the programs that actually saw an increase in funding.
So that's where the bulk of the money comes from, but that can only be used for a renter who was renting in Houston at the time of Harvey and moving to homeownership. We don't want to use that as a barrier, and so this allows anyone who wouldn't qualify for those funds but wants to become a homeowner in Houston and is otherwise qualified to continue to move forward. So this is just kind of a backup funding for that main pot of funds.
Thank you for breaking that down and sharing that and reminding that. But also, can you underscore the code enforcement? Because I know some of those funds support the Department of Neighborhood and some of those neighborhoods, and code enforcement's a high demand service in our city.
Yes, and we actually have a slide here coming up that kind of touches on that a little bit more and how we support other city departments, but code enforcement is listed on there. It's about $2.8 million that goes directly to the Department of Neighborhoods to assist in this effort. There's also some funding that goes to legal for the title search components associated with that activity. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So our Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME, this totals about $10.4 million. Some of these activities are multifamily rehab and developments, single-family development utilizing community housing development organizations, which is a specific type of nonprofit entity defined by the home grant itself, and then tenant-based rental assistance, which we partner with the Houston Housing Authority on for this piece. Kind of touching on a little bit of what Tom was just saying. The multifamily rehab development, we have a large amount of money in our DR17 funding for that activity as well, for many of the developments we've been putting out over previous years, and still many more to come. Next slide. So this is the budget for the housing opportunity for persons with AIDS. It totals about $10.3 million. This is operating costs for service providers in this area, supportive services to families and persons experiencing HIV/AIDS, and project or tenant-based rental assistance for those families as well. And then looking at short-term rent, mortgage, and utility subsidies. We want to, this funding is to make sure that people aren't choosing between receiving or getting the medications and the help they need, and having to choose between that and housing. And so that's what you see reflected in where this funding is going. And then the next slide. So the final entitlement grant we receive is ESG, or Emergency Solutions Grant. This is for the HMIS system that helps track homeless individuals as they work within the system, and the services are provided. Provides emergency shelter, homeless prevention, and then rapid rehousing programs as well. This is only $2.1 million. It's not a lot of money there. And of course, the need is always surpassing the funding that we receive in this area. So if we'll go on to the next slide, and I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, these funds that we receive from HUD also go forward and help other city departments roll out programs. So you see this across the board here. The Houston Public Library will receive an approximate $97,000 from us for their mobile library program. We'll anticipate allocating over $1 million for the Houston Health Department. The Department of Neighborhoods, we were talking about just a moment ago, will get over $2.8 million, and then there's a supplement there for legal to help with title searches related to that. And Houston Parks and Rec, we're anticipating to receive about $2.6 million out of this funding during FY22. So that's a total of about just over $7 million. And then there's also an additional $500,000 or so that goes to the legal and finance departments to support the activities that Housing Community Development directly rolls out as well. So you're looking at over $7.5 million being spent by other city departments beyond the work that we do directly with this funds.
And Derek, thank you for flagging this, because this was the main point I wanted to make in terms of your question, Chair Thomas, was that this slide shows primarily the programmatic funding that we are providing to other departments. In addition to this funding, we have agreements with the permitting department, with the legal department, with finance, the controller's office, and who am I missing? There's several other departments where we are actually paying the salaries of staff who are working directly on our funding. So it's this is the programmatic side of the funding, and then there's additional funding that comes out of it. And this is narrowly for the entitlement funds, which are the annual funds that we receive on a formula basis from HUD as we move forward. So it's not the full picture, it is the full picture of HUD funds from these 4 different grants.
Yeah.
Back to you, Derek.
So let's go on to the next slide. So the annual action plan is a draft document. It's out for public comment right now until April the 16th. A copy of that document is posted on our website, houstontx.gov/housing. Once you land on our webpage, if you just scroll down a little bit, you can find a copy of the document. You can also find our 5-year plan as well, in which this is a component of it, and some of our previous action plans if you just want some context around what we've done in the past. So on the screen here are ways to comment. We take it by email, hcddplanning@houstontx.gov. There's a voicemail number, 832-394-5400, or you can mail it directly to us, attention Planning and Grants Management at 2100 Travis, 9th floor, Houston, Texas 77002. Let's go on to the next slide because there's other opportunities to comment on this as well. This week, we have 2 virtual public hearings that we're holding. We do 2 in the fall, which we've already done, to help inform the creation of this document. These 2 are directly about the draft document itself. The first one's going to be held this afternoon at 3 o'clock. But these are being held via Microsoft Teams. We also do Facebook Live associated with this. And then the second public hearing will be Thursday night at 6 o'clock. We want the public feedback on this document, on our presentation, on what we're doing with this money. We encourage it. So please take part in one or maybe even both of these events. If you attend this afternoon, tell your friends, tell your family to show up Thursday nights. This funding is meant for Houstonians, and we want your feedback on how we have drafted how that funding will go. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. Any questions or comments around this?
Yes, we do have one question in the queue. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined. Councilmember Carlos Cisneros, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Martha Castix-Tatum, my wonderful Vice Chair, my brother in the struggle, David Robinson.
Thank you, Chair.
And if you can share those details, I'm sure my colleagues will be interested in putting that out in their newsletter and social media platforms to drive activity to the public comment session. We do have a question from Martha Castix-Tatum, our Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. This is Councilmember Carolyn Evans-Shabazz, and I've been here.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. My first comment is please, if we can get a copy of the flyer for our social media pages and for our newsletters, we definitely want to drive traffic to those events. That would be quite helpful. And then Director McCaslin, if you can remind me, if there are apartment complexes in our districts that need rehabbing, what's the process for that? Because I've got a extremely dense area that you're familiar with, and if I can help with getting those apartment complexes rehabbed, I think it would be a big shot in the arm in our Braes Oaks area. I know that we've got Belfort Place in the works and should be complete soon. What can I do to help to get more apartment complexes rehabbed in that area?
Let me give you a 2-part answer. The first one is that habitability, of course, is the primary point of contact and the department that has the enforcement for multifamilies, that developments that desperately need the rehab. And you're right, I've driven that area, I'm familiar with it. And so they, along with 6 other departments that do code enforcement against multifamily or participate in the code enforcement against multifamily, are the primary mechanisms for ensuring that we have responsible landlords. When it comes to the funding source for it, we're the department that folks go to for that, and we are working with the mayor's office in terms of determining whether or not there will be a notice of funding availability specifically for rehab that's forthcoming. And so we'll work with your office as soon as that decision is made and let you know about the availability. The longer answer to that is these are all things that we can do, and we need additional funding for it. And so this is a conversation we're having internally as we seek more leverage on our funds. We've built or will be building about 3,000 affordable rental units over the course of a 24-month time frame. But we also know that there are 75,000 households in the city that pay more than 50% of their income on rent and are at that poverty level or below. And so that's the challenge that you're facing in your district. We want to be participating, and we are very excited about what we're hearing in terms of the focus of the new administration on providing sufficient funding for us to be able to make some significant steps forward. And so rehab is something that we are looking at very closely, and we'll coordinate with your office on.
Thank you very much.
There are no other questions in the queue. So we can move on to our next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. And joining me for the next presentation will be our Assistant Director for Finance, Tamika Jones.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We would like to recommend that Council approve an ordinance creating a new fund in SAP titled Uptown TERS Series 2001 Affordable Homes. It doesn't look like maybe the title was updated here on the slide, but I did double check prior to me speaking, and it is properly listed in the Novus cover sheet, so it'll be ready for council agenda specifically on how we want it worded. But we would recommend approval of this new fund so that we are better able to track and report on the funds provided to the city by Uptown TERS. This is not an ordinance to sell the bonds. That ordinance was previously approved in January of 2021. This is simply an ordinance creating the new fund, which will allow us to really maintain strict visibility on how those funds are accounted for and reported. And that is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you much. I do not have any in the queue. Colleagues, do you have any questions for this section of the finance? Well, you can complete your go ahead and complete your entire presentation, and at the end, the floor will be open for questions for your section.
Okay. Next item. And I believe Tom, that was the end of my section, but I know we had some questions that Paula will be presenting on economic development.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
And Chair, I'll say a little bit more about this in my director's comments, but just for information, this action item is only setting up the financial fund where the funding will be segregated so that we can track and report on it carefully and with transparency. We'll be back to you next month with the specific budgets on how the money will be spent. All right, that's all we have unless there's, we can move on to Dr. Pineda.
Yes, we can.
Thanks, everyone.
And Dr. Pineda, over to you.
Is she on? Is she on?
I did not see her, Director McCaslin.
Okay.
Either.
Well, then I'll step in here.
Sure.
This is a program that you are all familiar with. Dr. Pineda has presented to this committee before. And these are the economic development activities that are funded through the Harvey disaster recovery funding. As previously presented, we have almost $25 million of these funds that are focused on micro enterprises and that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And these are grants for working capital, for job creation, and for unresolved Hurricane Harvey damage. The micro enterprises are, if we could go to the next slide, this details the provisions around the grant. It addresses a disparity in capital. It bolsters the Houston economy. Next slide. It's a maximum of $100,000 per small business applicant. Of course, it will have to. It will depend upon the specific application that comes in. And as a result of receiving these funds, there is a commitment for job creation, as well as using it for capital needs, like all of our grant funding. This is on a reimbursement basis. If we go to the next slide. Our department, led by Dr. Pineda, will be fully administering the small business grant program, doing outreach, application review, eligibility review, and so on, and then reporting back to council with regular program reports on the performance indicators and the spending. So very similar to what we do with our home repair program, where there's an authorization for us to go ahead and administer this, and then we report to you on how the funding gets spent. The funding must be spent, if we go to the next slide, by August 2024, pursuant to our contract. And this is scheduled to launch with actual spending in the program in the first quarter of 2021, with the rest of this year being the process for putting out the notice of funding availability and reviewing the submissions. As soon as that notice is available, we'll be circulating that flyer to you through the chair and through the mayor's office to make sure that you have that for distribution to your council members. I believe that is the end, unless Ray Miller or Dr. Pineda has joined to add anything else that I've left off.
We have one
I
question.
apologize. Thank you. No further comments. I'm sorry, council member.
Oh, it's all good. Good to have you with us. I'm really excited about this project and the deep investment into some of our hardest hit businesses. So I think these funds, coupled with our COVID small business recovery relief and all of that, we'll really start seeing some traction on this. We do have a question in the queue from Council Member Sally Alcorn.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a question about the bond fund, so I can wait if there's a better time to ask, or can I ask it now? Am I understanding correctly? I know it's number 30 on this week's agenda. This is bond money that we're issuing bonds against the affordable housing third, right? I mean, what is this bond money?
Yeah, it was issued by the Uptown TERS, and it's issued against the affordable housing increment.
Okay, right.
So
just what we want. Yeah.
Yeah, not
That's
general
right.
fund bonds, just against, and the obligation is the Uptown TERS that has the requirement to repay this. As a practical matter, this will reduce the annual amount of money that we get moving forward, but will give us the $100 million in TERS funds to be spent for, and again, more to come on this, but single family new construction development.
Mm-hmm.
So leveraging our increment, that third increment, and getting additional bond money, like we talked about a long time ago. I'm so excited about this. Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are very excited about this as well.
Great.
There are no other questions in the queue regarding this item.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pineda. And I'll be joined by Ms. Melody Barr, who's our Deputy Assistant Director for Public Services, for the next couple of items.
Good morning. I will be presenting 2 items this morning. Both items were previously selected via a notice of funding award process in 2019 with 1-year extensions. Both these items are currently being presented to council for a second amendment, which will allow for an additional 12 months of funding. So item 5A, the department is presenting a second amendment with Search Homeless Services to provide funding up to $132,579 for the administration and operation of a child care services program for persons affected by HIV or AIDS and their children through the Fauché Family House of Tiny Treasures, an early childhood development child care facility. This program will provide developmentally appropriate child care services to a minimum of 10 households affected by HIV, which will include a minimum of 16 unduplicated children and 35 family members. SEARCH has received funding from the City of Houston for various contracts since 1996. This amendment will provide funding through April 30th, 2022. Item 5B, the department is presenting a second amendment with AIDS Foundation Houston for financing the operation and administration of 3 separate multi-unit residential facilities with support services to low-income households living with or affected by HIV or AIDS. A minimum of 149 households will receive permanent housing with support services. The support services provided include but are not limited to case management, life skills training, nutritional services, and substance abuse and mental health counseling. AIDS Foundation Houston has received funding from the City of Houston since 1994. This funding request is in the amount of $1,080,238 utilizing HOPWA funds. This amendment will provide funding through April 30th, 2022, and that ends my presentation.
We do not have any questions for public services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, joining me for the next section is Ms. Ana Martinez, Deputy Assistant Director for Public Facilities.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'll be presenting the Mercado transaction. The Housing and Community Development Department is proposing a contract between the city and Mercado for a $72,000 community development block grant. Mercado is an online grocery order and delivery platform that is preparing to enter the Houston market through a 2-year pilot program in collaboration with the City of Houston. The goal of the pilot program is to bring fresh food to low to moderate income areas. The proposed program is targeting 38 grocery stores, which are all located in LMI areas, and has a goal of serving 1,000 residents by covering their annual subscription cost. The total Cdbg investment would be $72,000, as mentioned before. It'll cover a $72 annual subscription fee per customer. The Cdbg investment will cover the first year of the pilot program. The Mayor's Office of Economic Development is currently negotiating a revenue share agreement with Mercado that will cover the cost of the second year of the pilot program. We've invited Gwen Tillotson from the Economic Development Office to join us today in case there's any questions specific to that revenue share agreement. Also, per Cdbg regulations, we're proposing this as a special economic development activity that will meet the low to moderate income national objective through an area benefit. All 38 of the proposed stores have been mapped and meet the 51% requirement of having LMI residents for that 5-mile delivery area that is being proposed. The stores being targeted cover council districts A, B, C, D, F, H, I, J, and K. Please note that the participating stores, we've provided a map. They are subject to successful negotiations with each individual store. And the department and the Economic Development Office are currently targeting a mid-April council date for this action item. And that concludes my presentation.
This is great, really excited. We do have 2 questions in the queue regarding this item. I know council members Alcorn and Peck and I co-authored an amendment to this. So it's good to see you and your team in the housing department work to provide innovative solutions to respond into some of our neighborhoods. Really excited to this. Councilmember Amy Peck.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. This is really exciting news. So I understand that this is a pilot program. Are you looking to eventually expand this to other stores like H-E-B's, Kroger's, that kind of thing, that also want to deliver in other areas as well?
We would. So I think after the 2-year pilot program, we would reassess. At this point, we're obviously targeting some of the smaller grocery stores that don't already offer some of these deliveries.
Right.
I know for your HEBs, your Krogers, they already have the mechanisms in place for delivery. So I'm not sure if that's something that they'd be interested in, but it definitely would be something that we would, look into partnering, after that 2-year pilot program.
Okay. Yeah. And I think a lot of them are interested in it. And since they already have that mechanism, it's just about that delivery fee that they would look for some kind of, subsidy to deliver in areas that maybe they aren't currently delivering outside of their normal service zone, but to get fresh food to those areas too. Thank you.
And just to add into Anna's comment, anytime that we have a pilot program, we're hoping it's a successful program, and that we don't want to presume the success of it. But if it's successful, it's the kind of program we'd love to continue to support.
And okay, we have one more question. Vice Mayor Pro Tem Martha Casix Tatum.
So that was exactly my question that I was going to ask, that Councilmember Peck asked, and I would like to get a copy of the map. How many stores are we supporting? Was it 38?
It's 38 that we're targeting.
Okay. Okay, that was exactly my question. You may know that we're looking at a potential grocery store with delivery in Fort Bend, similar concept. So I was anticipating the future.
And I really like that they're targeting, not necessarily the big box stores. And so when,
right,
because at the end of the day, we need to provide the resources to communities, and we have to stop fighting those who, if they don't want to come into our neighborhoods, we have to participate with those who are willing to do so. And I think this is a great opportunity for, like your food towns, and they don't have this technology. They don't have this. And so this is, and people like my daddy who is still going to the stores during this time to shop. I think this is a great direction that the city is moving in, and to give these smaller box stores an opportunity to partner with the city willingly.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Carla Cisneros.
Thank you. This pilot will provide services up to 1,000 residents. My question was, could you please talk more about how the residents are qualified for this program, and who gets to do this? I mean, I see the map, but there's going to be a lot of interest in this, and how will they be like fairly distributed across these districts that have been identified, and how do they actually, what's the procedure to actually get qualified for this?
So the full procedure hasn't been ironed out in terms of how we're going to do the marketing and outreach. We're actually working with Mercado on that at this point. But I can tell you in terms of eligibility, if they live within that 5-mile radius of the store, then they're qualified because it's deemed to be a low to moderate income area, and they live in an LMI area that's 51% or more LMI. So that would be the qualifier.
So if it's up to 1,000 residents, and it's a year-long subscription, then is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know what the time frame is for more fully defining how it's going to be operating?
Gwen, I don't know if you have any additional details on that.
Good morning, council member. So we are, Mercado is developing their outreach and marketing and promotion plan. We've already engaged, of course, the Complete Communities. We're going to be working with the Department of Neighborhood. We're going to be working with the Director of Constituents and External Affairs, because they've got partnerships with churches. And we have requested Mercado's budget so that we make sure that their budget is sufficient to be able to promote and outreach to the community, to make sure that, this program is only going to be as successful as the stores that participate and the people that recognize its value and see the value in this program and take advantage of it. And so it's really important on the front end. And so we are looking to go to council now the first part of May. We had targeted April, but another thing that's very important is that we require that Mercado include an EBT and SNAP capabilities, which they didn't have as part of their original system. So they had to integrate that feature and functionality in order for us to proceed to council. And so the latest is that they're going to have that integration completed by the end of April. And therefore, we're planning to go to council the first part of May. And then we're going to give ourselves about a 3-month ramp up period, which is when we're going to do the outreach. Because these subscriptions are a full year, we want to make sure that the residents get the full benefit of the year agreement. So we're building in some ramp up, some lead time to do the outreach, to do the marketing, to get the onboarding from the stores completed before we go to the residents for sign up. So my thought is by the early summer, we'll be able to kick it off for the residents to be able to sign up for the 1-year subscription.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, well, I'm just anxious to see how it rolls out, you know, and wondering if that within the larger identified groups, if there'll be like weight given to someone without a vehicle or a senior or, you know, people that are challenged to get there, you know, so that it's not just a, you know, a nice convenience, you know, for free delivery, but it's really trying to get to the people that are you know, have more struggles.
You know, and that was the whole premise of this program, is to provide resources and access to the people that need it. And it's not necessarily LMI only, but it's for people that live within those areas that may have physical challenges, that may be elderly, or that has you know, children at home that prevents them from being able to go out to the grocery store when they need to because they've got to be at home caring for the kids. And so we recognize that there are multiple circumstances that warrants this need. And so, but we certainly want to think through the elderly population, the disadvantaged, the disabled population. But at this point, there are no other filters outside of location if they're eligible.
Okay. Okay, fine, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's just a pilot. We're just trying to see if the model will work, so then we could further expand with additional funds and better infrastructure. So it's only 72,000 just to cover the subscription.
Right. No, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, and we have to, you know, it'll be layered. And overall, I think there should be towards the end, and I'm sure they'll present their findings, homebound, like those that we've identified as homebound individuals, not necessarily just seniors, through the whole vaccination process. People have identified as being transit limited. All that information, I'm sure they'll be feeding into their program so they can present a more holistic, because this is definitely the right turn for us to take as a city.
I think so. One of the things there might be, maybe just one thing to think about as a model that CompuDOT uses, is that they, you know, qualifying families, maybe, you know, if there's a application they fill out and there's different reasons why they would be qualifying families beyond just the district they lived in, but to, you know, just those measures, and then that it could be a lottery system, and, you know, it wouldn't just be the first ones that got in there, but they distribute, you know, those refurbished computers to qualifying families on a lottery system, and you know, that you apply for. That might be a one model to look at while you're figuring these issues out.
And we do have one more question from Councilmember Amy Peck.
Thank you, Chair. One of the items that we put into the amendment was a job component item that it wasn't just deliveries to these areas, but it's also hiring people from the areas as well to do the deliveries. Is there any kind of job component in this pilot program?
So there has not been discussions about jobs, and let me just kind of explain. Part of that is in order for the food delivery service to be a part of the entire program, Mercado has to have contracts with drivers, or whether it's Uber, they've got a partnership with Uber and others similar to provide the actual, to drive the groceries and deliver the groceries, and that is through their contracts. We can certainly have conversations with Mercado to say that as needs arise for new drivers to support the area, that they maybe work with us through a job posting or a job board or job recommendations, so that we can funnel that back out, maybe on our website, if someone is interested. But in part because of their contracts, they have to have these contracts in place to make sure they are able to deliver the groceries within a reasonable amount of time. So they're doing that through contracts. And so people are working with those contractors or those vendors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This is great. Look forward to more details, and this being before council in the early part of May. This is exciting. Councilmember Carla Cisneros has one more question.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back and just say that I think there does need to be, some additional filtering here, because as I'm looking, some of these areas, where we are identified as, high areas of need, they are also gentrifying. And, so not everyone who lives there, just because they live there, is really in need. And I just don't want us to be, given something to, to someone who really doesn't need it, who wouldn't want this free delivery? That sounds really nice. That could be nice for anybody. But I think that really, having some more filters in place to make sure the families truly are in need, is something that needs to be thought through. Thanks.
And thank you, council member. And I appreciate the chair's comment about this being a pilot program. And one of the things that we want to do with the pilot is exactly what you've referenced and the chair referenced, which is identify who's actually taking advantage of this. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right that this program is set up to serve the most vulnerable in these areas. Mm-hmm. On our end, as we do a pilot, especially when we use federal funds, we have to be careful about how many impositions we put in, because the more barriers, the more requirements you put in, the more barriers you are creating for your most vulnerable. So that impacts the inflow of people accessing it. And on the flip side, the more opportunities you are giving to HUD OIG to come in and ding you if you forget to check a box on the other side of it. So we similar to the rental assistance program where we rolled it out, we identified what worked well and kept it, and we changed what didn't work well and improved it. That's the way we want to iterate on this. And my commitment to you, and we'll be working with Economic Development Office, is to bring back good data on the results of this, so that we can be having that open discussion about where we need to tighten up, so that we are targeting the vulnerable seniors who are homebound and low income, as opposed to someone who may be moving into an area and gentrifying, finds out about it and signs up. And so it's a question of how best to run these programs. But your concern that you're raising, I just want to say it's a concern of ours, and as we administer these programs, we are committed to bringing good data back to you on the results of this.
Tom, may I add just one more comment?
I just would like to say I applaud this effort, and I think it's very creative, and I like the resourcefulness and this, but the spirit behind it, and the commitment to tweaking it and getting it right as we move along with, as we learn from it. So thank you for this. I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Councilmember, I just want to add one more comment to Tom's point, and in terms of modifications that we've made to the program to address and be able to make sure that there is going to be equity in access. This program, the way that you typically would access the sign up as well as the request for food is through a computer or on an app on your phone. And we recognized that not every person within the communities will have access to a computer or will have access to a smartphone in which they can download an app or even have the ability and comfort level working with the computer or working with an app. So Mercado has agreed to set up a online telephone to allow people to call in, and then somebody on Mercado's side, through their customer service, will sign someone up just via phone, and people can actually place their orders via telephone, and Mercado will serve as that mediator between the customer and the grocery store to make the order. So again, we hear you, we recognize that equity and access is very important, and making sure that the people who needs the services the most are the people that are benefiting from this program. And so we're hoping that the demand is going to be much higher than the 1,000, so that we can actually expand and grow and then create some of the filters so that we have separate programs to meet the needs across the board. So let's just hope that this program is as successful as we think it can be, and then it'll give us a good problem to work through in the next year.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember David Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. And going out on a limb here, I think I'm going to predict wild success on this program. It's looking great, and $72,000 seems like a very small amount of money to be floating this pilot. But at the same time, I'm very optimistic for its success. As an at-large and a lover of maps, I will maybe make one or two comments just based on that prediction of wild success. The 5-mile radius, while it's good, there is some uneven cover, of course, and while we're targeting the LMI neighborhoods and those who need this service the most, and I think there's been some great commentary about that already in this committee meeting, but just wondering, anticipating the success, what would you suggest, Director, for our colleagues who may not have the type of representation in their district? I'm thinking about District K or District A, just based on the map, or for that matter, one of the more affluent districts, District E and District G, we are familiar with our colleagues whenever they are overlooked for the pockets of poverty that are in those neighborhoods. And just wondering, again, with anticipation of success, how our colleagues or how we could go about maybe suggesting additional grocery stores as the pilot is moving forward, or how do you plan to handle feedback?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. And I think that when it comes to spending federal funds, as we indicated with the conversation with Councilmember Cisneros, one of the things that we are looking at is ensuring that we have a way of spending it without overburdening the applicant who's coming in. And on the federal fund side, the area median income geography is that way. That's a good way to do a pilot. And so as we move forward, one option would be general fund dollars from the city. Something that we don't get from programs, but
Right.
If we are looking at moving into other areas where it is either incredibly difficult or almost or impossible to spend some of your federal fund dollars, but there's a real need there, we certainly will never say no to general fund dollars coming from the city. And so that's something that we'll leave open, because I share your concern that with the restrictions around federal dollars, there are folks in District C who need this service, folks in District G, large swaths of District K where there's a need, but maybe not the technical LMI within that 5-mile radius that would allow us to spend federal HUD dollars there. So very open to this, and I am incredibly excited about all the questions and enthusiasm, and looking forward to more conversations as we get some data on how well this rolls out.
Thank you very much. I'm just excited that the map reflects Southwest and West Houston, and that we don't have to put up a fight for that it's already integrated. So I appreciate that. Councilmember Tarsha Jackson, and I would like to acknowledge Councilmember Edward Pollard. He's joined the meeting.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Director, I really appreciate this project, and I'm happy to see, a lot of dots in District B. We're a district that is like been struggling with, having grocery stores, and we're a food desert. And so I guess my question is there a system in place, or is that a plan to work with these stores that you guys have outlined in the district to help them build their, I guess, capacity or revitalize their stores, or to get quality food? A lot of the stores that I see that's picked are not, they're grocery stores, but they're not like stores that provide quality food. And so is there something in place to kind of like assess that and see what we can do to support these businesses?
That's something that we've been looking at, and I know that we have a conversation coming up with you and your staff on a particular area in District B. It comes down to funding and a prioritization within the funding. To date, we have fewer dollars than the need, and I'll go back to that. The housing need that I referenced earlier, and I just want to reiterate, 75,000 households in the city of Houston who spend more than 50% of their income on rent and are at the poverty level. And we just are building 3,000 units, not all of which will serve folks at that income level. So as we have proven the ability to move money and to get the money out into the communities, I look forward to what is coming down both from the current rescue bill that's recently passed, the $1.9 trillion, as well as the upcoming bill that is beginning to be discussed in terms of infrastructure, because these are exactly the kind of investments that if the federal administration wants to address the long-standing disparities in the communities, we're going to have. And as you can tell, we're eager to lean in on this and stand up programs for that. But the funding has to be there in order for us to do the funding. And Anna, oversees public facilities, but it also works very closely with Ray Miller on multifamily and the other activities. But particularly with public facilities, it is a question of how much do you prioritize these kind of projects versus the repairs that you need for the homes that we're addressing. And every year we are making that split. Every year we are internally asking that question, making recommendations to the mayor, and then the mayor brings it forward to city council. And it's not an easy split to have, or a discussion to have, because there's tremendous need on both sides. And we're looking forward to having additional resources to be able to begin to address some of this in a highly leveraged way. So I know that's a long-winded answer to what should be a fairly simple question. But the reality is that these neighborhoods have been disinvested in for years, and it's going to take a significant amount of funding to provide the equity that we all say we want.
And if I can add to your comments, and so council member, I surmise that after this year program, that's some of the data collection that Anna and her team will be receiving, in terms of quality of product. Quality, was it delivered on time? Was it, did you feel safe receiving this from a third party? All of those items. So then their team can go back and review that pilot and then reassess the partners that we're initiating this agreement with on time. So, that gives us more data and information to define what is quality, right? And what's the expectation in this program for partners to offer out to those who are participating. And so we hope all of that information will be collected, and that's what the direction is. We do have two more comments in the queue. One more comment from Councilmember Peck and Councilmember Sally Alcorn, and after that, Councilmember Cisneros.
And excuse me, Madam Chair, and I'm so sorry, but I can't get in the chat, but I did send you a text.
Okay.
I know, and I'm at a real disadvantage with this, and I don't know why it does that. So just at the end of the others, could I ask a question?
Yes. Thank you. Well, since your first question and they are repeats, go ahead and ask yours since they've been in the queue. And you're the first time. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Certainly, I'm very excited about this. My first question is, after it's approved, and I may have missed this, When will this be rolled out? That's my first question.
May, first week of May.
Okay, now I do notice on my list we have Jim's Meat Market, which totally burned down, and so I'm not sure when it's going to be rebuilt. I'm told that it will be. So I don't know if there's a possibility of substituting another store in the meantime, because I do want this service. And then my last question is regarding, now the item says 20-mile radius, but the presentation says 5-mile radius. So could you give me some clarification on that?
The program that these clients will be receiving will be the 5-mile radius. Mercado does have an option for kind of an increased subscription that would be a 20-mile, but what we're talking about here specifically is the 5-mile radius.
Okay, so the item reads 20 so that if they decide they can expand, we don't have to bring it back for approval, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we don't, that actually may need to be a correction on the cover sheet, because we anticipate that this subscription will only cover the 5-mile.
Okay, now my question regarding the Jim's Meat Market, it's totally burned down. And as I said, I mean, several months ago. So, and I certainly don't want to lose the opportunity in District D to have another store replace Jim's in the meantime. I mean, I love Jim's and it's been a staple in that community, but if it's not functioning, then certainly we need to look at replacing it with another store.
And Burt Meats Market is closing.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so we certainly are open. Again, these are stores that we are going to be negotiating, or Mercado will be negotiating with. So if we are able to identify another store that meets that criteria of the 51% for the 5-mile radius, we certainly can look at that. We'd like to keep them within the council districts that they're in. So Please. If we have a replacement potentially that you can get over to us for Jim's, and then, Councilmember Jackson for Burt's, certainly would like to see an alternative there.
Okay, and maybe I can reach out to Jim's. I don't know when they plan to reconstruct, but certainly if it's not going to be in a short time frame, I don't want to lose the opportunity in the district. Right. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Martinez. Thank you.
For sure, thank you. Councilmember Amy Peck. And I would like to acknowledge Ashley Campbell. She's here on behalf of District C's office.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment, and Councilmember Jackson kind of touched on this already, about the food desert areas, because one of the big points of this amendment was to serve areas where there isn't any access to food. So while this is great, and I support this to serve areas within the 5 miles where people have trouble getting access to those stores, let's not forget about the areas that there isn't a grocery store within 5 miles. They have to drive really far to get any kind of food. So just as we're looking past the pilot program about expanding this to those areas that don't have any access at all to grocery stores, those areas are really important for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you much. Councilmember Sally Alcorn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Peck. That was something I was going to bring up to this when we created this amendment. This was really to deal with a creative way to deal with food deserts, but certainly appreciate all the efforts that are going into this. The idea is to getting fresh food to people who need it, and this is and I'm optimistic this is going to be a good way to accomplish that. Can you tell me a little bit more about Mercado? Who they are, if they've done this in other areas, just a little bit more about that company.
They have. So they've rolled out, and I believe they're based out of San Diego. And they've also done some work in New York and the East Coast, also I believe in Florida. So they've been around, I believe, since 2015. And they've been successful in those markets. This will be, very much a pilot program, and then they typically have not targeted these low to moderate income areas. So that piece definitely will be new for them, but we're helping them to navigate that by helping to identify the areas where we need them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Jackson, did you have another question, or did we already address your initial question? Are you clear?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
clear.
Okay, good. Councilmember Cisneros.
Thank you, Chair. This pilot will be funded by federal dollars. The director also talked about possibly looking to general fund dollars in the future. I'm interested in the future fundings. Do we think that there would be additional federal dollars if the pilot's successful? Would that be able to continue that? And that just even with, as he said, that there may be some general fund dollars. It got me thinking that it looks like there could be maybe opportunities for individual council members through CDSF dollars to target their own districts, with a supplemental program that could dovetail into this. Do you see that as a possibility as well?
I'm open to any possibility where funding can come into good projects, and so when I referenced general fund dollars, it was more of a comment around the restrictions of the federal dollars that we receive, which generally in any given year reflect 90 to 95% of our total budget. And the ways in which those restrictions drive some of the outcomes that we see here, which is a clustering of areas where you've got a 5-mile radius that is low and moderate income. And so knowing that you've got poverty throughout the city and people in need throughout the city. And so it really is a reference to that and to the acknowledgement that we are always making really tough choices when there's not enough funding to address all the needs that are out there. And with the, I suppose that I am stepping out on a limb that goes beyond my bailiwick, but I'll do it anyways. The opportunity that the current $1.9 trillion package has in terms of lifting households with children out of poverty is exactly that kind of system shift that we need in terms that half of the households that are living in poverty. In Texas, that's a little over 1 million households with children living in poverty. Half of those households will be lifted out as a result of this bill. Imagine how many more would be lifted out if we paid people a livable wage, at least $15 an hour. Imagine how we begin to step forward and really shrink the need because we are treating people fairly and justly. And I say that because there has been an expectation that our department can fix the problems that are being caused by a much larger system. And I don't want to pretend like we can. The need is too great. I cannot build my way out of the 75,000 households living in poverty that spend more than 50% of their income on rent. I can't do it. And so it is in response to that, as we think about budgets that are, I believe, deeply moral documents, that we have to be balancing where we are going to spend our money as we go forward. And I want to say that I am incredibly excited about the enthusiasm about this program and hope that we are successful and that we can continue to fund, and that ultimately the budgets that are approved do come back to you, and we look to you to help us as we craft those moral documents about who and where we are going to prioritize our money for. So I apologize if that, Chair, if that went beyond what I should be talking about as housing chair, but it is fundamental to the connected.
Yeah, Tom, I can add a little bit of light in terms of funding, because when this program was introduced to us through the Health Equity Response Task Force, and we engaged with housing and we started looking at, what can we do immediately? But we also recognize that this need to have some sustainability to be able to continue this beyond 1 year. What we didn't want to do is create an excitement, meet a need, and then not be able to continue to meet that need beyond just the first year pilot. And to Tom and Anna's point, the restriction exists with the first year because we are using Cdbg, which has restrictions. Once those restrictions are lifted, then it also opens up the geography and the types of residents. The goal is always, though, to serve the community of need, right? So this is really not intended to be a service of convenience, but a service to address limited access. So our plan, Anna mentioned that the first year will be funded by the Cdbg. There is within the agreement, a revenue share component that when stores reach a certain sales volume, and that number is 750,000 in sales, that Mercado is going to grant as a revenue share $1,500 per store that reaches that capacity, and at the next 750,000 sales level, they'll commit another 750. So for each of the 38 stores, there's a potential 2,250 to come back to the city as part of a revenue share, that's about $85,000. Which if we're able to get all of these stores producing at that level, so again, this is economic development because the goal is to hopefully increase sales to those businesses that have been serving the community by bringing in this additional way for them to attract customers and to serve their customers. So that 85,000 could potentially be the second year revenue source. And then outside of that, we've discussed internally creating a Chapter 380 program funded by sales taxes from the grocery stores that are supporting this project, so that a portion of the sales taxes generated would come back to continue to fuel and fund this program beyond the first 2 years. So we are looking for, and so if council district wants to use some of their CDSF dollars to partner with our office to be able to possibly expand, this is really intended to be a full collaboration. And the more resources that we're able to get, the more subscriptions, because a lot of residents can't afford $100 for subscription. As much as they have a need, that is a barrier to access. And what we're trying to do is to minimize, mitigate, or just eliminate that barrier. So I think as we start thinking beyond this first year, we certainly want to work with the council offices to identify funding sources so we can grow this program as quickly as the demand warrants.
I'm excited.
Thank you for that.
Director, I loved your comments too, and I'm very excited about this. Thank you.
Thank you much. We have no other questions in the queue. So Director, I think it's up. You're up next for comments.
Thank you, Chair. And before we go to the slides, let me just touch on two items. The first one I mentioned briefly, which is the TERS bond. We will be back to you with this very specific budget. But this effort is going to be focused, the $100 million in TERS bonds is focused on single family, new affordable homes. And I want to just give an example of what that might look like. The home behind me is a home that was newly built in Acres Homes and was recently purchased through our home buyer driven community land trust option. This allows folks to go anywhere in the city and get up to $100,000 if they're buying their home through the land trust. And if they are zoned to an A or B rated school, they can get up to $150,000 if they're buying through the community land trust. And I say that because sometimes when we are talking about the need for rental homes and the developments that we are doing there, folks reference the need for single family, and it's absolutely true that there is a need for this. I'll just remind folks, because we are talking about pilots, the funding for this home came out of a $3 million pilot, and as we bring the $100 million forward, you'll be seeing significant dollars being proposed to you, recommended to you to follow up on that pilot because of the success that we are having there. I don't have a picture behind me on this, but the first home the family purchased in Kingwood. So good, that was a district that wasn't reflected on the previous one, but we're starting to see that this truly can be a citywide effort. So we'll be back to you next month with those specific details, and I look forward to the conversations around it. The next topic of conversation that I wanted to update before we go through the slides is the rental assistance program. And we promised you that we would be bringing back to you monthly reports And as we start to get some real data in it, we will be working with our external contractors to bring you the kind of detailed assessments that you have seen on the previous rental assistance program. So with that in mind, knowing that this one is newly kicked off, and I will flag that based upon a call with the Treasury Department last Friday, Houston and Harris County are well ahead of the rest of the country in terms of the rollout of this program. And so while I am still pushing hard for us to move faster and more efficiently, know that we are moving far faster than anyone else that I've heard of so far. So here are the quick top line numbers. Remember that we are working collectively with the city and the county so that there's a single point of entry. And then once we identify whether they're in the city or county, the funding gets addressed appropriately from there. But 39,752 applications. This is slightly dated, so it's likely over 40,000 applications, with about half of them, or approximately 20,000, coming from the city. Have been received for the rental assistance. Just over 19,000 participating landlords for both the city and the county. Approximately half of those, again, are in the city. And remember that you don't have to have a participating landlord in order to qualify. We want your landlord to qualify because a participating landlord agrees to waive late fees, interest, and agrees not to evict the client. While the CDC moratorium is in place. But if they do not have a participating landlord, tenants can still apply, and the funding will be sent directly to them as opposed to being sent to their landlord. As you can see, lots of interest and lots of participation from landlords. Total $140 million in requested funds coming out of those 40,000 applications. Remember, between the city and the county, this was $159 million total, with basically the balance of that money really going towards nonprofits who can help people with their documentation. So far, 801 households have received assistance from the city, representing $2.7 million of funding. There's another chunk of funding that is about $5.5 million that should be going out tomorrow. That represents another just over 1,000 additional households. Right now, they're in the pledge status. And then total between city and county, another 10,000 applications have been selected for review, representing about $37 million. Again, this is not a first come, first serve program. There is a prioritization, and so these 10,000 applications have been selected based on that prioritization. And now the process of working through and ensuring that the Treasury required documents required by the federal government are in place. And that is the biggest hurdle for getting this up to the speed that we saw those other programs. Our earlier programs did not have this additional documentation. We work with the funders that we have, and so with the additional documentation, we are moving forward with this, and that's the reason why we're bringing on the additional case managers. I've already signed 4 contracts with the Urban League, YMCA, Northwest Assistance Ministries, and Memorial Assistance Ministries. Those documents are going through the process to get the full city signature, and we greatly appreciate City Council's approval so that can move in a very timely way with those case managers on board. That represents, I believe, about 12 full-time staff who will be helping folks across the city. And then one more contract that will be coming hopefully this Friday, which is another 6 staff that will be focused specifically on those families that are in the eviction process. More details for that shortly. But we know this money needs to get out. It cannot get out soon enough. And I will flag that there are significant jurisdictions that haven't even gotten their first check. The majority of the jurisdictions across the country haven't gotten their first check out the door. We are well ahead of that and are looking for this to really ramp up in the coming weeks as these case managers come on board.
I appreciate, I have two comments. So when you do update the dashboard, can you include information about how many of those households have turned into direct assistance? Because landlords have not participated, that will be helpful to know. And then also those in the 30% AMI that are unable to complete their tenant portion, how many of those applications that we've responded to? Like if they're with the voucher or the housing authority or something along that line, if we can include that. And if you could also include the same top 10 zip codes.
Okay. We'll work with you in terms of as our contractors bring this data back to make sure that we have all of the details that you're looking for in that. Absolutely.
Sure. Wonderful. But this is really good to know that we're already out the gate. And can you speak to the households we already had in queue from the round 2?
They're the first ones. The first checks that went out the door as a result of this funding were those who were already in queue. That's part of the reason why you see that. So the bulk of those 1,800 that either have been paid or are about to get paid, those are folks largely who were already in the process. We were able to get their documents in quickly and get them moving, even as we were waiting for the nearly 40,000 additional applications to come in.
Perfect. Thank you much. Councilmember Sally Alcorn has a question in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tom. And yeah, I loved reading that article in the Cron this weekend about how far ahead we were. I think the state had only given out like 3 payments from their program, their $1 billion program. But I missed how many landlords were participating. You said the number really quick. I just want to have that.
Certainly. Between the city and the county, it's just over 19,000.
Okay.
19,017 okay. Exactly when I checked the dashboard last, which was yesterday.
Thank you.
All right, unless there are any other questions, I'll go through very quickly these slides and then I'll wrap up. The first slide, if we can go to that, our office hours are ongoing, virtual community office hours every Wednesday. And then we can these pictures, let's just go through fairly quickly so that I'll talk as we go through. One of our Campanile on Commerce, 120 1- and 2-bedroom units right there just east of downtown. It is open and leasing. I drive by it almost every single day, and we're very excited to see another development open and be available as an affordable home. The next slide, just flagging that there was a virtual fair housing and workshop that we did with landlords and property managers. You've got a few pictures of the staff properly socially distanced as always, and we're doing everything we can to do our work, but to keep our staff safe, and I appreciate the team that continues to do that. These next slides are just some of the new homes that people have been moving into. This is a home in District B. For Ms. Reynolds, you can see both the exterior and interior as those key exchanges are happening. Demolition for another a homeowner that is happening there, and then another key exchange. This is not through the disaster recovery, but through our regular single-family program with another beautiful home built, and you can see both inside and outside there. So. Let's see, there's the another key exchange. And so just a few pictures of some of the homeowners who are benefiting. The next slides do go through the regular reports that we provide to you on all of the programs, so I won't go through them in detail, but happy to answer any questions that you may have. On that, I'll just note that on the new family construction, we have a fairly large number of homes that are about to come out of construction, of completion. In fact, just so that you can see some of them, this street behind me is a street that is very close to the corner of West Montgomery and I believe it's Victory. They're in Acres Home. These are lots that were previously held by the Houston Land Bank 4 or 5 years ago. Many of these were overgrown lots, and we made it a commitment to this committee that we were going to build on them and provide them as home ownership opportunities for families, so that rather than being a drain on the community, they would be an asset. And what I like about this picture is it's not just one, but you can see 3 homes that we are actually building. And in between these homes and further down the street, you can see where the private sector is coming in behind us and filling in the gaps. So as we've gone in and been the first folks to clean up a street, put new homes on it, it is an indication for the private sector to get to work and fill in the gap. And we're excited to see where that goes. Of course, about 80% of our new construction homes are going into the community land trust. And that's not a decision we're making. That's a decision that the clients are making. 80% of them are taking the home into the community land trust, and then about 20% of them are buying it outside of the community land trust at that higher price point for them. So excited to see that split. And I think unless there are any questions, I'll end my comments there and turn it back to you, Chair.
No, there are no questions in the queue, but just a comment from me. I think it's interesting that 80% are choosing to go to the land trust, which is an indicator that people are interested in different housing options that suit their financial status and works for them. And so this is a great opportunity for us to continue to educate our constituents about the different housing products that we're working with, because there definitely is a path to home ownership. That's not the traditional sense of the way you or I or someone else has purchased a home. And so I'm really excited that those numbers reflect that. We have no other questions in the queue, but we do have 3 public speakers that have waited with us for about an hour to share. And so, Sherelle, are we ready? Are they all in the queue still?
Yes, they are.
Okay, wonderful. So it's 11:21, and I would like to thank everyone for our presentations. We have Jay Malone, Political and Communications Director with the AFL-CIO. Mr. Malone, are you with us?
I am. Thanks for taking the time, Chair Thomas. I wanted to talk a little bit about 2 things. One, I wanted to let everyone on the Housing Committee know that we are working with Councilmember Thomas's office, along with Councilmember Gallegos and Councilmember Jackson, to put together 3 eviction prevention events in the next week. On Saturday, we'll be in Greenspoint at Harvest Time Church. Tuesday, we'll be in Alief at Good News Church, and Wednesday, we'll be in Southeast Houston at Baker Ripley. These events will provide residents with an opportunity to to apply for the Houston Harris County Emergency Relief Fund, Rent Relief Fund. We'll have facilitators on site who can walk folks through the process, as well as computers, so that if folks don't have access to technology, they'll be able to apply. We'll also have attorneys on hand to help tenants fill out the declaration for the CDC eviction moratorium. And so it'll be a great opportunity for folks that are struggling right now to access the support that they need. The very important resources that have been provided by the City of Houston through the Rent Relief Fund, and also through the protections, the eviction protections that were passed in February in line with the CDC moratorium. One thing that I wanted to bring up related to that was concern about the extension, the need to extend the grace period ordinance. The CDC is expected to extend the eviction moratorium that is set to expire on March 31st, but it hasn't yet. We know that this has prevented hundreds of evictions thanks to the great data work.
Sorry, time.
Okay.
Time is expired. Thank you so much for your partnership. And Sherelle has shared materials he was referring to in the meeting chat. And I surmise she'll send that out to your offices via email for easy access. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ms. Barbara Dolney, President of the IATSE Theatrical Wardrobe Union, Local 896. Ms. Barbara, are you with us? Ms. Barbara?
Hi there. Yes. Hi there. Thank you for having me today. I'm here to talk to you about 2 points. First, extending the eviction grace period ordinance for Houston until September 31st. The CDC eviction moratorium, we know, like Jay said, is going to expire March 31st. And the order has been successful in abating around only about, 1/6 of eviction proceedings in Houston. So we're asking you to extend the Houston grace period ordinance to ensure that tenants continue to be protected, because over 4,000 evictions have been filed since the beginning of the year. And if the ordinance isn't extended, hundreds more could be evicted. Unions and community allies have successfully worked with Chair Thomas and other members of the committee to get information about the grace period and the eviction moratorium to tenants, but now is not the time to end the order. So we ask that you extend the city grace period ordinance through September 31st. And the second thing is the creation of a standardized notice to vacate from form and tracking system for the city of Houston. Thousands of people are losing their homes without going through legal proceedings. In Texas, a landlord can post a notice to vacate one day after a tenant misses a rent payment, and most tenants don't understand the distinction between a notice to vacate and a writ of possession,
Right.
which is the actual legal document that require they leave their home.
Right.
So cities, including Dallas and Austin, have started requiring landlords to post specific forms along with a notice to vacate. This ensures standardized language is being used. It also gives the cities a means to track the numbers of notices being posted. Right now, property owners are governed by Section 24.005 of the Texas Property Code, which leaves valuable information to tenants out. One requirement could be that landlords post information about rent relief through the city and county. City Housing and Community Development Department could develop this form based on Texas law and easily post it to the city website. It would be budget neutral with no additional funds and that would have to be allocated. So we ask that you create a standardized notice to vacate form and tracking system for the city of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Your time has expired, and I definitely take your suggestion to heart, and we'll share this with the administration. Thank you for calling.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No problem. And lastly, we have Ms. Linda Morales, organizing coordinator with the AFL-CIO. Ms. Linda, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Linda Morales, as you said, with the Gulf Coast Area Labor Federation, also president of the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. I enjoyed the conversation on the Mercado. Yeah, sorry, Mercado. It was a good conversation to hear. I too, like Barbara and Jay, support extended the grace period ordinance to September 31st, and also about creating the standardized notice to vacate form and tracking system. It would really help. Look, we represent about 95 affiliated unions of building and construction trades, public sector, manufacturing, transportation of people and goods, hospitality, and other service industries. Many of our unions have been hard hit by the COVID pandemic and the freeze that we recently encountered. So anything that this body could do to extend the grace period ordinance would be appreciated, and creating that standard notice to vacate form and tracking system. I know you guys have a busy day. Please consider what we are asking, and thank you very much.
No, thank you so much for taking the time to join the conversation and add your suggestions. And I'm sure I have several colleagues that join with your sentiments, right? This offers us an opportunity to close some loops, to have more information and data about the eviction process with families presenting homeless, those struggling with housing insecurity, and all of it's tied together, right? So thank you for looking at us as a partner to do that work. And then again, I'll share this with the administration and work to see what resolution and options we can offer. So in historic form, it's 11:28. I don't know if we've ever had a meeting that was an hour and a half, but I want to thank you for this very lively discussion. And this is recorded. Feel free to always refer back to this link. This information will be sent to you all at noon. Sherelle put a note in the chat box. So if no other questions or comments, this concludes our meeting at 11:28. Be well and have a great day.
Bye-bye.